Minister, we know that there has been a spike in domestic violence in recent months. It appears that public health measures have unfortunately created the circumstances by which violence can prosper and spread. What action has the Government taken to address this in my own constituency of Cork North Central?
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. Since my appointment, I have significantly prioritised the issue of tackling domestic abuse and supporting victims, and I can assure the Deputy that I am working collectively with all of my colleagues and with our partners to address the immediate needs of victims of domestic abuse and going forward to put in place a system designed and built around their needs. With regards to the Deputy's specific questions around measures to combat increased incidents of domestic abuse in Cork, as I've said, our collective approach is a national one, but this includes working to make sure appropriate supports are in place for victims wherever they live, and I will maybe refer in my response in more detail to Cork in particular. I'm committed to supporting victims in the short term. This includes by addressing the challenges presented by the pandemic and also to introduce an improved and comprehensive approach to providing the services that victims of domestic, sexual and gender-based violence need. Together with Minister O'Gorman, I met with Safe Ireland, or will be meeting with Safe Ireland in the coming week, and we will be meeting on a continuous basis to try and address many of the concerns that they have raised. I've published and started implementing Supporting a Victim's Journey, which includes the actions necessary for the full implementation of the 52 O'Malley recommendations. This will introduce very real supports and protections for vulnerable witnesses and victims. The update I received yesterday from the Implementation Oversight Group, which I chair, is testament to the real determination of all those involved to meet the ambitious targets set out in the implementation plan. I've already referred to the audit of services to be completed by the end of March and to review of the second national strategy for combating domestic, sexual and gender-based violence. This will inform the design of the third one. I've also referred to the proactive approach taken by my department since the start of the pandemic and to the COVID-specific funding provided. I would like to draw attention to the Still Here public awareness campaign run by my department in partnership with public sector organisations and NGOs. This campaign is about getting the message out that services continue to be available for victims of domestic abuse and that travel restrictions do not apply to victims who seek help. I think this is a message worth repeating at every opportunity, and I urge anyone who is a victim of domestic abuse to reach out for help when it is safe to do so, because the frontline services will support you and will prioritise your case.
The rest can be read into the record. Deputy.
There were 19,344 domestic abuse incident reports in the period the 12th of March 2019 to the 3rd of November 2019. This year, from the 12th of March to the 3rd of November 2020, there were a total of 22,540 reported incidents. That's an increase of over 3,000 cases. There have been 217 prosecutions for domestic violence during the pandemic. It is vital that the Government does everything in its power to address this. It is welcome that a number of initiatives have been undertaken by both Government and An Garda Síochána in recent weeks. In particular, Operation Fuishiv is ensuring that the Gardaí on the ground are working to address this. Gardaí have made over 15,300 contacts or attempted contacts to victims of domestic abuse as part of Operation Fuishiv. While much is being done to ensure that people are aware of the supports that are available, it is unfortunately the case that there are gaps which need to be addressed. One of those gaps is the access to refuge places. I understand that the Minister for Children is also involved in this area, but it must be addressed. Can the Minister provide an update on when we can expect to see action in this regard to improve the provision of places?
Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. As you've outlined, obviously that is work that is happening within the Department of Children, and Minister O'Gorman and his team are currently undertaking that audit. I think it will be due in early in the new year, but obviously it's much more than just bed spaces. It's about ensuring that the appropriate services are there, and obviously that people are working together, state agencies with the community and voluntary sector. In relation to your own county, unfortunately, and these figures are not specific to Cork because we've seen an increase everywhere, but 14% of an increase in 2020 versus 2019. If we break those down then for Cork North, it saw a 15% rise in incidents. Cork City has the largest number of incidents, and then Cork West saw a 20% increase in incidents. So it really is very clear that this has become even more of a problem than it already was before, and it's, as you said, a huge amount of work has been done by An Garda Síochána Operations Fuishiv. Specifically, again in this area, have had 217 prosecutions, 20,699 contacts or attempts to contact victims by An Garda Síochána, and 110 prosecutions have commenced. So there is a huge amount of work underway, specifically by An Garda Síochána in Cork, to try and deal with this problem.
Deputy, 1 minute.
It's welcome that there is a review underway for refuge space. Could the Minister perhaps clarify when the review is expected to conclude? Domestic violence is often discussed in the overall context of gender-based violence, but it is broader than that. We know that men are victims also. We also know that child-parent domestic abuse is an issue. I am taken by the lack of availability of refuge spaces for men within the system. It appears that there is not currently research on the need for such places. It stands to reason that there may be an unmet demand which is not being addressed. Is the Department willing to consider the development of male refuge places alongside addressing the need for additional spaces throughout the system?
Thank you, Deputy. Again, I suppose as this is not my department, what I can say is that my understanding is that that review will be concluded in the new year. I think by April is the timeline that has been set. But I suppose there's a whole suite of different things that are happening at the moment. We have the audit to look at all of the different departments and the services and the support that they provide, and how we can put in place a much better structure to make sure that we can drive implementation of services and bring about much needed change in this area. You have the implementation or the review of the second national strategy, which will then feed into the third strategy. You have the implementation group working on the supporting a victim's journey, which is very specific for people who have been victims of sexual violence and are going through the court process. But as well as that, there's a huge amount of engagement happening. So I mentioned meeting with Save Ireland, but I've met with countless different community and voluntary groups, and obviously it's important that we can support them in the work that they are doing. And as part of the implementation of the O'Malley Group, what we're currently looking at is how we can fund them in a much better way, that it would be funding for perhaps 2 or 3 years, so that they can plan and put in place the supports and services, but they can plan ahead, and that's something that I think has been missing. So there's lots of different things happening. Obviously we need all of it to come together, because there's a huge amount of work still to do, but I am fully committed to that, and I know Minister O'Gorman is committed also.
Thank you, Minister.